If you set up your portfolio like this, you will consistently attract those long-term five-figure projects. And this is really about understanding what's in your portfolio, how that works with your clients going through your portfolio, and really understanding the difference between what they're looking at in terms of articles or white papers or case study. So I'm Mandy Ellis. I built a six-figure freelance writing business, and now I help other freelance writers build high-earning freelance writing businesses they adore without the overwhelm, burnout, and stress. We are going to go over several different factors to attract clients with your portfolio and really get that five-figure work. So the number one main thing is understanding what they're looking for. So if I am going into your portfolio as a client, this is the first thing. I am looking at your articles and I'm making sure that they're kind of along the same lines of a high quality magazine. This is something that a lot of writers miss. I want to look for interviews. I'm looking for stats to back up what you're saying. I'm looking for maybe pertinent images, right? I might be looking at like, is this structured for SEO? Am I getting all of the tidbits in here that's really helping this audience? So I'm looking and breaking down your content, not just for tone and style to match what I have on my current blog or what articles I have, but it's really moving in that more direction of high quality content where you are pulling in experts or interviewing people at the company. You're putting in certain stats to, so it's not just like you're like making claims and not backing them up. And you really have a lot of authority that you're writing with, right? That authority comes from those interviews, from those stats, how you write, if they can pick out the keywords that are in your article. But for me, you're really attracting those high-end clients because they see that quality in your work. Now, if you're going through kind of like a white paper, you're going to be looking for a lot of stats, right? This could be a 5-page white paper or a 10-page white paper, but it's going to be something that's laying out the differences in that product, right? That product's difference in the market. That's what a white paper is. That's the difference from a case study, which is like a juicy testimonial. A white paper is more like how this product or service is really setting the thing apart, or how this process is setting itself apart in the market. So if I'm looking at a white paper and I'm someone who wants to pay 10K for a white paper, which is very common if it's a long ass white paper, I'm looking for a lot of really good quotes, right? Just like that article, I'm looking for good quotes. I'm looking for you to put in good data. I'm looking for you to analyze that data well. I'm looking at you to create this white paper to really kind of like market almost the product, not so far, but it definitely feels, if you are someone who is a journalist, writing a white paper or a case study will feel a little bit more marketing-y than you writing like an article where you need to be, more journalistic and more non-biased. Or as non-biased as you can be, right? So when you're writing this white paper, it needs to be something where I am drawn through the content, through the data, without getting bored, without feeling like this is something I've heard before. It really sets it apart in the market. I can see that these interviews and these stats make sense. I can see the call to action at the end. And it's something that would make me really want to subscribe or pay money for this white paper, because we know that white papers sometimes are behind either a paywall or you have to share your email to get it. So it's something super valuable that I will then use, right? It's something when someone looks at my white paper clip, I can see that as a potential client, that it's pulling in those leads in terms of it's something where they share their email, they pay for it, and it's super valuable to them. Let's say I was writing a case study. So if I'm writing a case study and someone comes across that clip, they're looking for that case study to break down the results, right? I still have quotes in there. I like case studies with pop-out quotes because those are kind of fun. They're easier to read. And then there's also like data in there, like the transformation, right? The process that someone went through in that case study to go from A to B. What results did they get? What's the future of the product? What troubles were they struggling with? And I'm not looking at this necessarily, and like I said, in terms of tone and style, I'm looking for you to weave things together and highlight the most important pieces. So I can kind of see myself having you create a case study, because this case study walks me through the process clearly. It's engaging. It's something that I would like to have. Like, let's say your potential client wants this again as like a paywall or a subscriber element where someone has to share their email to get it. Like, it's a super valuable piece of content for them. So they're looking for you to walk them through in the case study that, you're walking them through the challenge and why were they seeking a solution and what solutions did they use in the past and why did they choose this product or service and the results they got for it. And then what are basically like the next steps, right? What would be the future of this? But let's say we were writing like a blog post. I think for me, when we're talking about blog posts, it should be something that's more like an article. Like I said, when we're writing an article, like blog posts, that this is something that has been changing a lot over the years. I think for my own business, pretty much most of the content that I write as like a blog post could be published in a magazine. Like I don't write those basic blog posts. And I think if you're really wanting to attract 5-figure work, like you want ongoing work, long-term clients, or people who are going to pay you, multiple thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to keep working with them, you need to be moving in this direction of like interviews, research, backing things up. It's not just like basic evergreen content. It really is adding a unique perspective with a bunch of stuff to back it up. This is also why people like thought leadership. So thought leadership is similar, where you need to have a unique perspective. You can't just show up and be like, I have an idea. You need to be able to have a unique perspective and then back that up with research, data, facts, quotes, all that good stuff. So I think when we're moving into that, that's kind of really important stuff, especially, this is the last one I'm going to say on one. Especially if we're working on like sales pages or email marketing, email copywriting, or we're working on just general copywriting projects, things that are supposed to be getting a result. I think for me, a lot of times we're really looking for like, are we taking the customer through the story? So we're taking them through the story and then we're kind of propelling them into action. So anytime I'm looking at a piece of copywriting, especially if I'm going to give you, like, let's say I'm going to give you 5 or 10K for a sales page, or I'm going to give you 5 or 10K for an email marketing campaign, right? I want to see that you can tell a story, that you can engage me as someone who's the reader, right? I'm opening this email. It's interesting subject lines. It's something where like I know exactly the clear call to action. I know my next step. I'm talking about pain points. I'm talking about how to solve them. I'm taking you through the story and the transformation of what it's like if you go to the other side and buy this thing, right? I think those kinds of things are really important. So in order to attract this, you need to have these kinds of elements in your portfolio work. And if you have a 5-figure client on the hook, I want you to grab my free seasoned veteran cheat sheet. If you go to mandyellis.com/cheat sheet, you can grab it. And this is something that will help you then onboard that client. It gives you other stuff too, like how to get your marketing done, what you should have on your website and LinkedIn to attract more of those high-end clients. But once we get this client, we also need to be able to onboard them and understand kind of their mentality. So if you grab my cheat sheet, mandyellis.com/cheat sheet, that will help you then bring your client some confidence when you run them through this pro onboarding process. Number 2 here, I want to make sure that we're talking about like the differences in conversational and technical. There will be times like a white paper or maybe sometimes a case study where it will get more technical in tone, or you will have something more conversational or storytelling-esque that is your copywriting stuff, and it can be articles. It could sometimes be case studies. It could be, certain kinds of marketing materials. But I think for me, when we're kind of looking at them, the best thing that you can do, especially if you already have a client on the hook who's like, yes, we want to give you a ton of money, get examples. Okay. This is what I get all the time, is like, to walk me through like how these are different, or walk me through this. You need to ask for an example from your client, because I've had clients say like, I want you to write a white paper. And I'm like, great. They give me an example and I'm like, that's not a white paper at all. So when you're looking at these things, you need to ask your client, what is it? Like, show me an example. Can you send me 3 to 5 or 2 to 5 examples of the kind of copy that you want, right? The kind of content. Because there is like, they will have a tone sometimes for their blog, and a tone sometimes for white papers, and a tone for this, even though they're not supposed to. They're supposed to have similar brand, tone, style, all that stuff. They will kind of moosh it around. So you want to make sure that you're getting examples of them so that you can kind of match what they're looking for, right? We're meeting expectations. The other thing too is like, everything has a time and a place. So there will be more technical or more stiff content in like manuals or technical writing, or how-to guides, or stuff where, we have to give people directions, or even like I said, like white papers can be kind of stiff sometimes depending on the industry, compared to copywriting for emails or sales pages, where you really want to pull people in and you want them to take action and you're really telling a story, or an article where you are meeting the style guide of the magazine, or you're writing an article for a client and you're meeting their tone and style, which more likely is like fun or more energetic, and not as like stiff and to the point as you would for like a white paper. So every time you get something, ask for an example. Okay. So every time you're looking at this, this is how we get those clients. Like, they want you to ask questions. They want you to be engaged. They want you to come up with ideas. They want you to participate. So they're looking at your portfolio, and then they want you to kind of participate at this higher level. That's how you're going to keep attracting that work. You're going to get these clients where they're like, we should do this. And you're like, yes, send me examples. I want to make sure I meet your needs. I want to make sure I understand the project. That's what they want, is engagement. And then the third thing here is like, when we're going through these projects, we're always making sure that even if they want to give you $20,000 or $30,000 for content strategy, or, you know, multiple white papers or multiple email campaigns or whatever, you still need to make sure you understand like what you are doing. So for me, I like to read a lot. This is something that I think a lot of writers skip, even though almost all the writers that I know started as readers. They loved reading. I don't care if you became an accountant or a scientist or a creative writer, or you started as a teacher, or you know, in, I don't know, some other industry, space travel. Almost all the writers that I know are big readers. Now, this is something that I think is really important. The more you can read and absorb those types of content, let's say you want to get into case studies or white papers or email campaigns or content strategy or brand strategy, the more you read the templates, the more you read examples of those things, and you see the wide range, the better you can create content, because not everybody sees the same kind of case study. Like, I've done like a 1-page case study and like a 16-page case study. It might have even been 20 pages, but it was really long. So there's like different variations in tone and style and format and length. So I think for me, it's not necessarily that we just know all this stuff, right? There's basic stuff that we have for the formats, right? Like, we have a general format for a white paper, and a general format for a case study, and a general format for an article. But you really need to read widely. And a lot of writers panic. They panic when they get to this step, and then they don't get the renewal on their contract because they didn't actually go read a bunch of things. They have an example, but they weren't like, okay, how can I go 1% beyond the example? How can I make it even better than the example they gave me? That comes from reading. Read a lot of case studies. Google them. Go find other people who write case studies in your niches. Go look at white papers. Go look at other portfolios of people in your niche, or companies that you admire, and get a lot of information. This is something where I usually recommend, like, to my Wealth Lab and Runway students, where you should be reading, like, when I talk about magazines, you should read 20 to 50 articles. That's really important so that you can get up to speed on the magazine. You know what they're publishing, their tone and style, you know how to put a pitch together. This is the same thing, whether you're doing brand strategy or content marketing or copywriting, or you know, content strategy. You are getting a lot of information, so then you can distill it down for this one piece. And I think when you skip this part, when you skip the part of understanding that like, you need to kind of know the quirks, and that comes from reading. It's not just someone telling you, it's literally seeing the formal application of that thing. So the more case studies you read, the more white papers, the more email campaigns, or the more whatever, the more you will absorb all the different types of variations, because writing is really cool in that they're all kind of different, right? Not every white paper follows the same format. Not every case study follows the same format. But I think for me, especially when we're talking about getting more of this work and clients looking at your portfolio, you really need to get to the point where, like, you have this example, but you're also like, how can I make this thing 1% better? And you're reading a lot, because that enriches your work, right? That's like the recycling thing that goes right back into your portfolio. So the better you can make your clip, that reflects in you getting more of these high quality clients. Really important thing that writers forget. They're like, oh, sweet, I got some money and let me just do this work. You have to remember that the better you make your work, like, the more you work on, 1%, just make it 1% better than the example they gave you, or 1% better than last time. That recycles into your portfolio. And then when you're sending clips, or you have potential clients on your website looking at your portfolio, they're like, okay, cool. Like, this is great. I love this thing because it's better than last time. And it keeps kind of recycling, right? It keeps kind of, well, maybe not recycling, but it's something that keeps exponentially getting better, right? It's something that I think is really important. So I think those three things are the most important things you need to pay attention to, especially when you're looking at these bigger projects for higher level clients. And the next time, we are going to talk about how we actually put all this stuff together. Like, how do I actually get the work done, but I'm also cutting time out of my week? So this is something where you can cut at least 10 hours a week, when you're putting these systems in place to get your work done. And this is another thing where writers get the project, or they start panicking, or they realize they're getting paid a lot of money, and then they don't pay attention to these things, and they make the project expand to the time available. I'm going to teach you how I actually run all of the stuff in my six-figure business and get things done, and also cut hours per week. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.